The Lord, He doesn't forget us. I'm glad I remembered by Him. God is good to us. We've been a long way. I'm going to have to apologize to my wife. This is the third time I've preached this sermon. And she was there both times. I tried and tried and tried to get away from it, but nothing will come back. But God is good to us. I was inspired a few years ago by a statement that was made by a Kentuckian. His name was Mitchell Toll. He was a world-renowned artist before he became a preacher. He designed the logo for the Kentucky Wildcats. He drew that. He made it when they won the championship. And several years ago, he was at a Texas camp meeting, and he made this statement: what is the price of a sheet of paper? Think about it. Sorry, honey, I gotta do it again. She's been putting up with me for nearly 56 years. What do you think about that? November the 18th. And he said the price of anything is the sum total of what it took to produce it. And I cannot remember all he said. But Brother Toll became a world-renowned artist because until he was about 4 years old, he couldn't even walk. And his dad went out and bought him some papers and some drawing papers and some crayons and watercolors and start drawing. And he did. He said he sold paintings for as high as $65,000. And right in the middle of his career, he got called to preach. To get a sheet of paper, you got to have wood. You got to cut down the trees. You got to have trucks to haul them. You got to have diesel in the trucks. You got to have a place to produce the paper. We didn't get that aroma this time coming through Chillicothe, Ohio, like we used to. You've been through there. Remember that paper plant? You knew you were 5 miles from Chillicothe when you got the smell of the paper plant. She knows what I'm talking about. Where you could be asleep, but it will wake you up. So we have to take the paper or the wood to the mill, the paper mill, and make paper, produce it. Then you got to have a truck to ship it over to Walmart or Staples or Home Office Depot, somewhere, so that you can buy a sheet of paper for a couple of cents. All that took place so that we can enjoy everything that we enjoy. We don't really comprehend on what it took to make to get it to us cheap. You know, probably the poorest person you know is rich compared to millions and millions upon millions of people in this world. We throw away enough in this country to feed millions of people every day. But we don't take into consideration what it took to get here. Or what we have, what we take for granted every day. It's there available. We are in a materialistic society. We want more and more and more. And we want to do less and less. You know, when you can't really go out and do anything because you can't get people to work. You remember when our mom and dad got $1 an hour to work. I remember hearing a story of 3 kids there at Lookout School. The principal found them three of them trying to divide 2 slices of bread for lunch. That's true stories. See, she went to the same school as I did. We take it for granted what we have. And God forgive us when we're not happy or grateful. We were watching TV a while back, and this man, he owned two pairs of jeans. One for wear every day, one for Sunday. He left $3 million to people, for kids to go to school on. He said, that's all I needed. What did it take for us to be here in this place this morning? I remember the first time I met my daughter-in-law was the night before she was going to marry my son. She thought I didn't like her. My son, we were pastoring in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. He had come home all happy. He had a friend. They broke up. He cried and bawled and squalled. I'm telling on you, Ron. Where are you? I am tired of girls. I'm just going to go to school and do my work. Middle of the night, I get a call. Mom, Dad, I want you to meet my fiance. He was famous for pulling pranks on us. And I thought it was our daughter Lydia. And I thought Mary was Lydia, and I told her to be quiet. And she hung up the phone and said, he don't like me. We came down, and wife and I were sitting out there in Ron's van this morning, and we're looking up on the hill. It's hard, if you've never seen it, to imagine in your mind that there used to be two buildings up there. You know, they got married in the cinder block building, and they had the reception over in the old building, the real old building. And that's when I met Pastor Ricky. His papa was all upset that Kathy had bought a skateboard. You remember that? You told him it's got a handle on it, but it don't have any brakes. He knew that Ricky was going to break his leg. You did you? Okay, I am so glad. But what did it take to get to where we are? Surely this church wasn't just built so that Pastor Stedman would have a place to preach. You'd have to go all the way back to in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. In the beginning, He created, He parted the darkness from light. He created every living thing that you see until He got to man. He got down on his knees and started forming man from the dust of the earth and breathed into that lifeless form. He did not speak life into that form. He breathed into that form. And man became distinct from every other creation in that he became a living soul. We are the only creation of God that has a soul answerable to Him. I have a preacher friend in Texas. He just moved to the area from Minnesota about 2 or 3 years ago. I told him it's supposed to be a joke, but there's a lot of truth to it, and he used it. He's one of them, he's more educated than I ever thought about being. He's a wonderful person, wonderful man of God, Brother Dan Williams. The devil went to God one time and said, I can do anything you can do. Oh, yeah? What can you do? So I can make a man. Let me see you try it. So he gets down on the ground. God says, what are you doing? So I'm making a man. Oh, you make a man, you got to use your own dirt. use your own there. Brother William said, I used that again last week, Brother Kendrick. But God wanted someone to serve him because he gave us a free will to serve him. Then he turned around and he said, every creature you see has got a mate. Man doesn't. So he put Adam to sleep, created from a rib a woman, Eve. He ordained that man and woman would be together and worship him and serve him because they desired to do so. I use this a lot of times in weddings. Man, God did not take a bone from Adam's head because the woman bent over man. Didn't take a bone out of his feet because man would walk on woman, but he took a bone from his side that they would walk together. They would walk together. I remember when I married Susan and Spencer. Spencer said, Pawpaw, you knocked it out of the park with that one. This was God's intention. This was God's plan. You realize that there were no carnivorous creatures. Everyone lived off of the things of the earth until Satan tempted Eve. Sin entered the garden, and they had to be expelled. God did not want man or woman or mankind to live forever in a sinful state. And the first sacrifice was made for sin. God had to kill animals to make them coverings because sin had entered a perfect garden. Sin was allowed into God's creation, so they were expelled. Things didn't get any better. It got so bad that God looked down one day and said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm just going to have to destroy the whole world. But he found Noah and his wife and 3 sons. Have you ever stopped to consider that while he was building the ark, there was still time to be saved? You ever stopped to consider that? All the years he was building the ark, some of them might have been helping him build it. It's time to come onto the ark. No, what are you talking about? It's going to rain. God said it's going to rain. What's that? What's a flood? Never heard of one of those. I have a little book. I don't know where I came up with it. It was by a preacher from Elkins, West Virginia. Has little sayings in there. And he also had a little thing in there, 2 little. Pastor Rick, I'm gonna make you a copy of this and send it to you. This man's sitting at his desk. It's called "Oh, You Foolish Man." Capital O, period, U, period, foolish man. That's his name. And he says all these things on his desk, how to make money quick. Jesus is standing there. I want you to give your heart to me. Oh, come back a little later. I'm busy making money. You flip the page, and he's still there at his desk. Only this time, death is standing there. It's time you come and go with me. Oh, you foolish man says, I'm busy making money. Death says, I only come once. While there was yet time, they could have entered the ark. But when God shut the door. Why did God shut the door, Brother Eddie? I think he was afraid Noah might try to open it. Mary, did you ever hear that song, It Wasn't Raining When Noah Built the Ark? The rush for the door didn't start till it grew dark. Don't wait for the judgment to give the Lord your heart, because it wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. And after the flood was over, and God put his rainbow in the sky, he gave me every opportunity again. I'm not going to take all the time I usually take on this, but you've read the Bible, you know the promise to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob. You know the time that Israel was in Egypt, how he delivered from Egypt. The time of David, Solomon, all through this time, there was one king would come up and they were good. He would go away and be a bad one. Then there'd be a revival, and here come good prosperous time. That king would die, and here come another one. God said this isn't working either. And now here, if you'd all been here this morning, I might sit down here, because Pastor Ricky and preach the rest of it. God said, I'm going to send my son. And I'm going to send him in the form of a baby. I am going to let them see him grow up. I'm going to let them see when he went to the temple to be dedicated. Simeon and Anna came, recognized who he was. Oh, Simeon said, Lord, your servant can depart in peace. My eyes have beheld the glory of God. And as he grew, remember the time that they went to the Passover, and here they go on the way home. Where's Jesus? Been gone a couple of days. They went back. He was at the temple, confounding the scribes. How does this young man know what he's talking about? And they look at him. Can you imagine a mother, you're traveling for 2 days and you realize your son's not with you? Where in the world have you been? Don't you know I have to be about my Father's business? He grew in stature. I like Mary was talking about watching those videos. You realize that the very first miracle Jesus ever performed that is recorded, his mother said, do it. All she really said was, they have no wine. He said, it's not my time yet, Mom. She turned around and said, whatever he tells you to do, do it. And she walked off. I got a feeling if she was your mother, you wouldn't have bucked her either. And he performed the first miracle because his mother had requested. They have no wine. So the wine that was presented, that Jesus made, was better than what had been presented at the beginning. You know, that master of the feast, he said, don't they give the best first, and at the end, they get, after everybody's drunk a little bit, they get the cheapest. But you save the best for last. I'd like to say something to you this morning. I want you to consider this. I've heard it said that this time in our life, we've talked about this, my wife and I. A few years ago, come on 3 years ago, we sold our home out in the country and moved into a senior citizen place, and there's a lot of old people around us. Actually, we were some of the youngest ones there. Woman next door, I said, "Why are you selling your car?" My son said I had to quit driving. I said, "How old are you?" 94. Okay. But this time in our life, he didn't save it for last. He saved it for now. Let's live in the now that we're in. Let's live for now. And what we do now will determine where we will be in the future. We're making a path for us to travel to the future from here. For now. And we are living in an age of utter confusion. If you want to get depressed, just watch the evening news. 2 or 3 years ago, now we were sitting in Bastrop First Assembly of God. I don't even know what Pastor Woods was preaching on. But it came to me, we have two terms today. I've used them both, but I quit. One is politically correct and politically incorrect. I'm not one, my son can tell you, I don't go around and say, God spoke to me and told me this, and but he spoke to my spirit. He said, what can politics do for you? Okay, Lord. And I've heard, I don't know how many people, what filter do you use? Brother Eddie, how about this as being your filter? If you can't prove it by here, then don't use it. If you can't back it up by the Word of God, don't use it. I don't care how good it sounds, you got to be somewhere, it's got to be somewhere in here. So they took him to the cross. Took him to the cross. Someone wonder where I'm going to. I'm telling you how we got the church. You know, it was about 325, 326 BC before they ever had the first church building. They met in homes. Matthew the 16th chapter, 13th verse, when Jesus came unto the coast of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, saying, whom do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? One of these days, every one of us in here will have to give an answer to that. Every one of us. That is the most important question we will ever be called on to answer. Who's Jesus? And they said, some say that thou art John the Baptist. Some say Elijah. Others say Jeremiah or one of the prophets. But he said unto them, but whom say ye that I am? Who do you say I am? And Simon Peter, oh, I love old Peter. I would like to tell you that I would like to identify with John the Beloved, who never did anything wrong, but I don't want to lie to you. I've identified with Peter many a time. And if you have ever stuck your foot in your mouth and wished you hadn't said something, then you can identify with Peter. But Peter, when he got it right, I want to tell you, he got it right. Simon Peter answered and said, thou art Christ, the Son of the living God. You're Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered and said unto him, blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood hath not revealed it unto thee, but my Father which is in heaven. Peter got it. He messed up a few more times. But he was always going back to Jesus. Aren't you glad that Jesus allows U-turns? We turn around and head down the road, and he said, hey, I'm back here. Oh, I'm back. And I say also unto thee, thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Let me make one thing clear. He did not build the church upon Peter, but upon what Peter had said. You are Christ, the Son of the living God. I know who you are. I will give unto you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatsoever thou shalt bind on earth, that shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever shall thou loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Let me try to paint a visual picture for you this morning. When Jesus said, I'm going to build my church, he didn't go out and get him he was a carpenter. Let's go cut down some trees and hew some wood, some timber. Let's get some stuff and make an adobe hut. He didn't get in a building program. But in the 21st verse, he says, from that time forth began Jesus to show unto his disciples how he must go into Jerusalem and suffer many things of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed and raised again the third day. He was going to build his church by going to a cross. By dying on a cross is how he was going to purchase the church. The cross. If you all had been here this morning, I'd stop right now. Pastor Ricky really laid out the cross this morning. We know the story of how he was raised from the dead. I had a pastor friend several years ago down in Texas. Two members of his church went to Israel and came back and said, Pastor Kaler, there's two tombs over there. They say Jesus was in both of them. He said, well, which one's empty? They said both. He said, oh, I'm afraid you might say there'll be a body in one of them. I'm not worried then. And I hear that there are. It depends on what guide that you'll have take you around Jerusalem. We cannot find a body in a tomb. All the other religions, they have pilgrimage every year to go to their grave. And you stand at a grave of a dead man, Brother Eddie, to worship him and ask favor. But the Jesus that I serve, he was seen and he was lifted up and he went back to heaven. And on the day of Pentecost, when he said, I'm going to send my spirit, go tarry and wait for the promise. When the promise came in, the church came down. And we're here today because of all of this took place in this little church today. I'll take that back. A.W. Tozier said somebody came to him and said, I pastor a small church. He said, there's no such thing as a church. That in this building today, we're here. Thank God for the legacy of Brother and Sister Stedman. This church was built. But really, This building is not the church. The church meets here. We make it a church to the extent that we show up and do the will of the Father by giving honor to His Son Jesus, who has saved me and has brought me out from where I was. And I want to tell you, I've heard it said many and many times, well, he wasn't all that mean. He wasn't, or he was so mean, I don't know how God saved him. I do. You know what? It doesn't matter what you were before. You were a sinner by the fact that you were separated from God. And when you're separated from Him, you're lost. There's no degree of it. This one's a little less than that one, so I know. No. The ground is level at the foot of the cross, and we have to come to Him at the cross. You love that old song, At the Cross, at the Cross. Where I first saw the light and the burdens of my heart rolled away. It was there by faith I received my sight. And now I'm happy at the cross. All that happened, like the sheet of paper, the sum total of what it took to get here. The main ingredient of that was our Savior dying on a cruel tree. I'll not get into what it really must have looked like. All my life I have seen a sanitized version of the crucifixion. Jesus hanging on a cross with a couple drops of blood coming out of each hand and out of his feet. A little bit coming out of his side. No. He was beaten. He was abused. He was tied to a cross. The nails were driven into his wrist, and he hung there. And on the cross, Pastor Ricky said, he began to forgive sin. One of them said, hey, if you who you say you are, come down and save us all. And the other man said, we deserve what we're getting. This man has done nothing. Then he said, said, Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And he said, this day you'll be with me in paradise. It's already been said he couldn't have been baptized. He couldn't have joined the church. But from that cross, one went into everlasting darkness. One went back to his Father with an old repentant thief and dog. And we're here today because of that cross. And in the end, he said, go into all the world and preach the gospel and proclaim the good news of teaching them to observe all things whatever I have commanded you, and lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. We're the church. You're part of the church. You know what? When we realized it, in some of our situations, we may be the only Bible that our neighbor reads. There goes those people to church again. Wonder what they get out of it. Got to be available to let them know. That's what we long for. I don't know, my good Kentucky friend back there, can you remember the time we looked? I had certain clothes I could not wear to school. You shaking your head? Yes. Why? They were church clothes. They got everything out of the way to go to church. And now it's, well, I'll tell you what, I like to go to church on Sunday, but I got to mow the grass. I like to go to church on Sunday, but I got to wash the car. I mean, what are you doing the other 6 days? I'm just too busy. What's he going to find us doing when he comes back? We never know what God has in store for us, how he can use us. Ron says I can't say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. We started joking when we got ready to move. Said, our kids kicked us out of the house and moved us into town. Well, we both had health issues and things were happening. This is a long time before COVID had started doing that, but we wound up going into a little senior place. We have our own little place, little porches. We get out and talk. The first Easter that this thing hit, we had about 10 or 12 people in our front yard, and we had church on our front porch. They said, if you'll have service, we'll bring our lawn chairs and we'll spread out. And that's what we did. One of them had only been a widow for about 3 or 4 weeks. She came out and sat with us. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it for the Lord. And after we'd already not pastored for a while, and a pastor friend of ours got sick, had to go in the nursing home, and when we were approached, can you go fill in a couple Sundays? Yeah, sure. Can you go next Sunday? Yeah, sure. Then, well, when are you going on your vacation? I said, well, a couple days after Labor Day. Could you stay till then? 4 months ago. Then how many Sundays do I have to fill in for you while you're gone? In the meantime, the church clerk comes up and hands me a check and a set of church keys. What are you saying? This was not a plan. There's about 8 or 10 people, some of them older than us, that need a pastor. When Jesus told Peter to feed my sheep, he didn't say how many. He just said, feed my sheep. Somebody next door to you might need your smile, your encouragement. Mary, you trying to hurry me up? I love you. Oh, I want to thank Jesus for the plan of salvation, and to say, Lord, I love, for you understand. Oh, I want to be ready on the great judgment, just to touch all the nails in your feet and your hands. One morning past daybreak, as the crowd slowly gathered, like a sheep he was come to his Father's own way. So sad was the place there, birds hushed their sing. They were walking miles up Calvary's hill. If you know that, sing it with me. Oh, I want to thank Jesus for the plan of salvation. Just to say, Lord, I love you. For you understand. To be ready on the great judgment morn, just to touch all the nails in your feet and your hand. Pastor, will you come on up here? Oh, I want to thank Jesus for the plan